I remember the exact moment my life split in two. 1 second, I was standing at the head of a long glass conference table in Manhattan, presenting a rebranding campaign to a dozen sharp-suited executives. The next, my vision blurred, the polished room tilting like a funhouse mirror, and a searing bolt of pain shot through my skull. My knees gave out before I even realized I was falling. When I woke, the ceiling was too white, too close. Machines beeped steadily beside me. Tubes ran into my arm, and my throat felt like sandpaper. A nurse leaned over, her badge catching the light. "You're at St. Luke's Hospital. You collapsed at work. Just rest." But her words blurred into the sentence that has haunted me ever since. "We called your emergency contacts. Your parents said they'd come, but they never did." Imagine that. At 29 years old, lying in a hospital bed with a possible brain condition, and the people who were supposed to love me, most simply, didn't show. No call, no message, nothing. The cruel irony, my phone buzzed just an hour later with a notification from Instagram. My sister Lauren had posted a selfie in the Hamptons, drink in hand, captioned, "Family weekend." Just what we needed. She tagged my parents. Not me. Never me. My name is Madison Carter. For as long as I can remember, I've been the invisible daughter. Lauren, 3 years older, was always the golden child. The straight A student, the Princeton graduate, the one with the perfect family aura my parents loved to parade around. I, on the other hand, was the one they politely clapped for, but never truly saw. On paper, I've built a life worth noticing. I worked my way up in New York as a marketing strategist, landing accounts that made headlines in Adweek. I rented a modest but beautiful apartment in Brooklyn, filled it with thrift store finds and art from local painters. I had a rhythm, a routine, but none of it ever seemed to matter to my family. To them, Lauren was the star, and I was the background blur. So when my body finally betrayed me and sent me crashing to the floor at work, a part of me, some small, desperate part, believed this was it. This was the moment they would finally come running, that even if I'd been second best all my life, surely this would be different. But it wasn't. They didn't come, and that's when the truth slammed into me harder than the pain in my skull. Sometimes, the people who should show up won't. Sometimes, family means disappointment dressed up in Christmas card smiles. What I didn't know then, lying in that hospital bed with the monitors beeping like a metronome of abandonment, was that this collapse would be the start of something bigger. Something I had avoided my whole life. A confrontation with the family who raised me, and the discovery of a different kind of family, the kind you choose, the kind that shows up. I'll tell you everything, from the Instagram post that broke me, to the words my grandfather whispered before he left this world, to the shocking way my sister twisted even my surgery into a power play. But before all of that, let me introduce myself properly. My name is Madison, I am 29 years old, and this is the story of how I learned that blood may tie you to people, but love, real love, is proven by who walks into the hospital room when everyone else walks out. If you are watching this, drop a comment telling me where you are from. Hit subscribe and stay tuned to hear how I finally stood up for myself after years of being the forgotten daughter. Growing up in our Connecticut suburb, my family looked picture perfect to the outside world. Our colonial house, with its manicured lawn, could have been a postcard. Inside, though, there was an unspoken rule. Lauren shined, Madison stayed in the background. Lauren's science fair projects got framed on the mantel. Mine, stuffed in a drawer. She played piano at recitals. My parents dressed up, invited neighbors, took videos. I wrote short stories that won county awards. My mom would tack them to the fridge for a week, then replace them with Lauren's next big thing. "Why can't you be more like your sister?" Dad's favorite line. She applies herself. I worked hard. I brought home a 3.7 GPA, joined debate, volunteered at the shelter. But compared to Lauren's perfect scores and Princeton acceptance, I might as well have been invisible. Mom once told a teacher, right in front of me, "Madison just doesn't try hard enough." Her sister never had these issues. The shame of sitting there, hearing my own mother diminish me while Lauren was celebrated, carved something permanent inside me. And it only got worse with age. At 16, my friends threw me a small birthday party. I waited at home for my parents to show up with the cake. Instead, I got a text. "In Vegas with Lauren for her dance nationals. We'll celebrate next week." The next week never came. By graduation, the cycle was cemented. When I walked across the stage, they cheered. But afterward, dinner was all about Lauren's medical school boyfriend and how lucky she was. My acceptance to NYU barely got a nod. I started to understand then that I wasn't just overlooked. I was optional. So when the acceptance letter came, I ran to New York. I told everyone it was for the career opportunities. But truth, I just wanted to breathe, to live one day without hearing Lauren's name in every conversation, to see who I could be without being her shadow. Still, even in New York, the ghost of comparison followed me. Holiday dinners, phone calls, every conversation turned into a recap of Lauren's flawless life. Marriage, kids, a beautiful house back in Connecticut. I built campaigns that redefined brands. She redecorated her guest bathroom. And somehow, that was the bigger news. And I swallowed it, year after year, until the Thanksgiving that changed everything. I drove home, thinking maybe, just maybe, things would be different. Instead, I opened the door to my old bedroom and found it transformed into a playroom for Lauren's kids. No warning, no discussion. "We thought you wouldn't mind," Mom said when she saw my face. "It isn't like you're here often." That night at dinner, I shared news about my promotion. Dad looked at his watch, asked if anyone wanted more turkey. Lauren launched into stories about her kids, her husband's new job. Everyone listened. No one heard me. The next morning, I left early, pretending it was for work. No one asked if I got back to the city safely. 3 weeks later, Lauren tagged me in a Facebook photo, her family smiling in front of their giant Christmas tree. The caption, "Family complete." My name wasn't even mentioned. That was when I finally let the truth sink in. No matter how hard I tried, I would never matter to them the way Lauren did. But here's where the twist comes in. Years later, lying in a hospital bed, I realized something brutal. I had always believed that in a true emergency, they'd come, that if it was life or death, I'd stop being optional. I was wrong. When I first set foot in New York, I told myself I was chasing opportunity. The truth was simpler and uglier. I was running from Lauren's shadow, running from parents who never saw me unless they were comparing me, running from the ache of being the child left out of family photos. New York gave me a kind of freedom I'd never known. I rented a shoebox studio in Queens with peeling paint and paper-thin walls, but it was mine. I filled it with secondhand furniture, plants that barely survived, and posters from Broadway, shows I couldn't really afford. It was imperfect and small, but for the first time, I could breathe. No constant reminder of what I wasn't. My career became my identity. I clawed my way into a junior role at a marketing agency and worked myself to the bone. Long hours, skipped meals, endless revisions. And slowly, I rose. By my mid-20s, I was handling campaigns worth millions. My bosses praised me as a machine, someone who never broke. If they only knew how much I was already cracked inside. Every holiday, I still tried. I'd send expensive gifts to Connecticut, designer handbags for Mom, a rare bottle of scotch for Dad, something thoughtful for Lauren's kids. Most of the time, I never even got a thank you. When I'd call, conversations always circled back to Lauren's life. Her new house, her picture-perfect kids, her husband's career. If I mentioned a client I'd landed, Dad would grunt and say, "That's nice, but Lauren's planning another addition to their home." The message was clear. I was background noise in my own family. And then came the breaking point. It was Christmas Eve 2 years ago. I made the trip back to Connecticut, arms full of carefully wrapped gifts. I reached the driveway, only to find Lauren's SUV already there. Inside, the house was glowing with laughter. I stepped into the living room, ready to hand out gifts, when my father casually handed Lauren a key. "Here," he said, smiling. "You might as well use Madison's old room for the kids. No point in it sitting empty." Lauren slipped the key onto her keychain like it had always belonged there. My old bedroom, my only sanctuary in that house, was hers now. I froze. My mother must have seen the look on my face because she said lightly, "You don't come home much anyway. It just makes sense." The room spun, the same way it would later in Manhattan before I collapsed. I dropped my bags on the floor and muttered something about being tired. But inside, something snapped. That night, I didn't sleep in my room. I slept on a pull-out couch in the basement, surrounded by boxes of Christmas decorations and dusty photo albums where Lauren smiled on every page, and I hovered blurry in the background. The next morning, I drove back to New York before anyone else was awake. Not one person called to check if I got home safely. And here's the twist. I told myself I'd cut ties after that I'd be done with them. But I wasn't. Some pathetic part of me still hoped, still believed that if a real crisis came, they would show up, that when it mattered most, I'd matter too. I didn't know yet that life was about to test that belief in the harshest way possible, that my body would collapse under the weight of exhaustion, and when the hospital called, my family would choose a weekend getaway over me. Work became my refuge, but also my prison. At 29, I was managing national accounts at a sleek Manhattan agency. Clients flew me out for launches, trusted me with multi-million-dollar budgets, and praised my presentations. On the surface, I was thriving. But behind the glossy facade, cracks were widening. The headaches started quietly. Dull throbs at the base of my skull after long days staring at screens. I brushed them off. Then came the fatigue. Coffee couldn't fix it. Weekends spent horizontal on the couch didn't cure it. Friends urged me to slow down, but slowing down felt dangerous. If I stopped producing, who would I be? Then came the dizziness. Sometimes I'd stand up too quickly, and the world would tilt like a carnival ride. I joked about it. My colleagues laughed, calling me dramatic. Only Sophie, the junior copywriter who had become my closest friend, seemed concerned. "You need a break," she said one afternoon over sandwiches. A real one, not a long weekend. I waved her off. There was always another deadline, always another project. The North Star pitch was supposed to be my crowning achievement. A major sports brand, a massive budget, and the chance to finally secure a promotion to director. I poured everything into it. 16-hour days, skipped meals. Migraines dulled only by prescription pills. By the time the presentation rolled around, I was a hollow version of myself, in a charcoal gray suit that cost half my rent. Sophie looked at me that morning and whispered, "You look awful. Are you sure you can do this?" I forced a smile. "I have to." The executives filed in, sharp eyes and sharper suits. I clicked through my slides, my voice steady at first. Then, midway through explaining the demographic strategy, the room began to warp. The faces in front of me melted together like wax figures. The pain in my skull spiked, white hot, blinding. I reached for my water glass, but never made it. The last thing I remember was someone shouting my name as the floor rushed up. When I woke, I was already in the hospital. Machines beeped steadily, IVs pumped into my veins, and a doctor with kind eyes explained that I'd collapsed from exhaustion and dehydration. But there was something else. My blood work and scans hinted at abnormal pressure in my brain. They needed more tests. I asked when I could leave. She shook her head. "You're not going anywhere. Not until we understand what's happening." That's when she said it. "We called your parents. They said they'd come. But they haven't." I should have been used to it by then. Years of neglect had conditioned me to expect disappointment. Still, a cold weight settled in my chest. Even now, lying in a hospital bed with doctors whispering about tumors, I was an afterthought. Hours passed in a blur of nurses, medication, and drifting sleep. When I finally checked my phone, I found a single notification from Lauren. Not a message asking if I was okay. Not a call to check in. It was a Facebook update, a photo of her family, grinning in matching jackets at a ski lodge upstate. The caption, "Family time is everything. Couldn't be happier." She tagged my parents. I stared at it until the screen blurred with tears. And here's the twist. The only thing my family chose to do after learning I'd collapsed was to quietly remove me from a group chat. No explanation, no apology, just erased, like I had never been there. I woke the next morning to the rhythmic squeak of shoes on linoleum and the low hum of machines. The dull ache in my skull had settled into something almost tolerable, but the weight in my chest was heavier than ever. My parents hadn't called. My sister hadn't texted. The only family update I'd seen was a smiling photo from a ski lodge. When the door creaked open, I expected another nurse with a clipboard. Instead, it was Sophie. She carried a tote bag stuffed to the brim. Her expression a mixture of worry and determination. "You didn't think I'd let you rot in here alone, did you?" she teased gently, though her voice cracked at the edges. She dropped the bag on my bed and began unloading pajamas, toiletries, even the paperback novel from my nightstand. I stared at the familiar items, confused. "How did you—" Her cheeks flushed. "I used the spare key you gave me. Remember, the one you said was for emergencies?" It hit me all at once. She had gone into my apartment, my private space, my sanctuary. Some part of me wanted to be angry. Another part wanted to weep from gratitude. "I hope that's okay," she added quickly. "I figured this qualifies as an emergency." I nodded slowly. "Yeah, it does." For the first time since collapsing, my throat tightened with something other than fear. Sophie had known me for only a few months, yet she had shown up more than my own family ever had. Later that day, a nurse named Clara came on shift. She was in her early 40s, with warm eyes and a voice that carried calm even when delivering bad news. As she adjusted my IV, she chatted about her 3 kids, her love of true crime podcasts, and her disastrous attempt at baking sourdough. Somehow, her stories made the sterile hospital room feel less like a prison. "Don't worry," she said at one point, squeezing my hand. "You've got us. You're not alone." Her words sank deeper than she probably intended, because in that moment, I realized she was right. My blood relatives might have abandoned me, but here were two near strangers, Sophie and Clara, choosing to stand by me. That evening, the doctors returned with their test results. Their expressions were grave. "Madison, the MRI shows a mass pressing against the membranes around your brain," Dr. Patel explained carefully. "It's called a meningioma. It's likely benign, but the pressure it's causing could be dangerous. We recommend surgery within the week." The word surgery echoed like thunder in my head. Brain surgery, at 29, alone. After they left, I sat in silence, trying to process. Sophie perched on the edge of the bed, her eyes wide with fear she tried to mask. Clara poked her head in and gave me a reassuring nod. For a fleeting moment, I thought, maybe this is my family now. But just as I let that thought soothe me, my phone buzzed. A new message. My heart leapt. Maybe it was my parents at last. It wasn't. The text was from Lauren. "Call us when the surgery is over. We need to talk about Grandpa's estate." Not, "Are you okay?" Not, "We're worried." Just a reminder that to them, I was valuable only when tied to property, inheritance, or convenience. I stared at the screen, my chest tight, with a rage I'd swallowed my entire life. And here's the twist. At the very moment I was facing a life-threatening operation, my family's only concern wasn't me at all. It was money. The hours in the hospital stretched like years. Day and night blurred into the steady beep of machines, the shuffle of nurses, and the dull ache inside my head. I tried to distract myself by reading, by watching sitcom reruns on the tiny TV mounted to the wall, but eventually, boredom pushed me into the one place I had been avoiding, my phone. I told myself I'd just check emails, maybe skim the news, nothing personal. But within minutes, a notification banner lit up the screen. "Lauren Carter tagged you in a post." My stomach dropped. Against every instinct screaming not to look, I opened it. The photo filled the screen, bright and cheerful. My parents, my sister, her husband, and her 2 kids, all grinning in front of a roller coaster at an amusement park in Connecticut. They wore matching T-shirts that read, "Carter Family, Fun Day 2025. The caption, "Family is better without the drama. Perfect day, perfect company, perfect memories." Without the drama. They weren't subtle. That phrase was a knife, twisted deliberately. I lay in a hospital bed, waiting to hear whether the mass in my skull would kill me, and my family was smiling for cameras, celebrating my absence. I scrolled through the comments. Beautiful family. What wonderful memories. So lucky to have each other. Not a single person asked where I was. My name didn't exist. I didn't exist. My eyes burned, but I refused to let tears fall. I dropped the phone onto the tray table and turned my face toward the wall, swallowing the lump in my throat. If I started crying, I wasn't sure I would ever stop. That night, as I lay awake under the harsh glow of the hallway lights spilling through the crack in my door, Clara stepped in. She noticed the tension in my face immediately. "Rough night?" she asked. "They don't care," I whispered. "My family. They'd rather post pictures about how peaceful life is without me than check if I'm alive." Clara sat in the chair beside my bed. "Then maybe it's time to stop waiting for them. Sometimes the family you choose ends up being the one that saves you." Her words lingered as sleep finally claimed me. The next afternoon, everything shifted. My phone rang, not with another notification from Lauren, but with a FaceTime request from an unfamiliar number. I hesitated, then answered. The camera opened to reveal my grandfather, Edward Carter. His face was pale, thinner than I remembered, but his eyes lit up at the sight of me. "Madison," he rasped. "There you are." "Grandpa?" My throat tightened. "Are you okay?" He gave a ghost of his old smile. "Not really. Stroke last week. But never mind that. I needed to see you." I blinked back tears. He was the only one who had ever truly seen me, even as a child. Fishing trips at dawn, teaching me chess on rainy afternoons, sending birthday cards with handwritten notes while everyone else forgot. "Grandpa, I'm in the hospital," I confessed. "They found a tumor. Surgery. Soon." His eyes sharpened despite his weakness. "I know. Your father mentioned it, in passing. Typical." He coughed, then leaned closer to the camera. "Listen to me. The lake house at Crystal Lake. It's yours. Already signed. Always your special place." I gasped. "Grandpa, you don't have to—" "Already done," he interrupted firmly. "But more important, stop running, Madison. You hear me? Don't keep running from them. Make them hear you, then decide if they deserve you." Tears blurred my vision as his voice faded, exhaustion tugging at him. "Love you, my girl," he whispered. "I love you too," I choked out. The screen went dark, leaving me clutching the phone to my chest. And here's the twist. My family hadn't called to check on me, but they had called Grandpa, not to ask about his failing health, but to discuss his will. And he, seeing through it all, had chosen me. The day after my call with Grandpa Edward, my phone lit up again, this time with a group FaceTime request from Lauren. I almost declined. I was drained, stitched together with equal parts medication and rage, and the last thing I wanted was to see their faces. But Grandpa's words echoed in my head. "Don't keep running. Make them hear you." So I answered. At first, the screen showed my father fiddling with the phone, his face too close to the camera, his expression unusually tense. My mother hovered behind him, eyes darting everywhere, but at me. Then Lauren appeared, flawless as always, her husband and kids laughing in the background. "Madison," my father said stiffly. "We were worried." I laughed, a short, bitter sound. "Were you? Because the last time I checked, you were having a family fun day without the drama." Lauren winced. "That wasn't about you." "Yes, it was," I snapped. "It always is. My absence has been your peace for years, hasn't it?" For a moment, silence. Then, Grandpa's voice cut through, weak but commanding. "Enough." The camera shifted as someone turned it toward his hospital bed. His face was drawn, but his eyes, sharp, steel blue, burned with authority I hadn't seen in years. "Frank, Helen, Lauren, sit down." No one argued, not even my father. "You failed Madison," Grandpa said flatly. "Not once, not twice, her whole life. Always comparing, always sidelining. You left her invisible in her own family." My mother flushed. "That's not true. We love both our daughters. Love isn't lip service," Grandpa snapped. "Love shows up. Where were you when she collapsed? Where were you when the doctors called?" "At Six Flags." My father tried to defend himself. "The nurse said it was exhaustion. We didn't realize." "Didn't realize?" My voice cracked. "You didn't call back. You didn't check in. You didn't even send a message. But you had time to post photos about how perfect life is without me." Lauren crossed her arms. "You're being dramatic. If you'd told us it was serious, of course we would have come." "Dramatic," I repeated, my pulse spiking. "I was lying in a hospital bed, waiting to hear if I had cancer, and you were worried about Grandpa's will." Her cheeks flushed, but she didn't deny it. Grandpa's hand trembled as he pointed at her. "Lauren, you've enjoyed the golden child crown your whole life, but you let it make you cruel. Posting that picture while your sister faced brain surgery? That's not just selfish. It's heartless. For once, Lauren's perfect mask cracked. I didn't think. That's the problem, I said coldly. You never do. Because thinking about me would mean admitting I exist. My father rubbed his temples. We made mistakes. But Madison, we're your family. Are you? I whispered. Because family means showing up. Family means caring. Family means making someone a priority. And I can't remember the last time any of you did that. The silence that followed was suffocating. My mother's lip trembled. Lauren looked down. My father stared at the wall, jaw clenched. Then Grandpa spoke again, softer this time. Madison, tell them what you need. Say it now. I took a deep breath, every nerve in my body alive. I need to be seen. I need to be valued for who I am. Not who I'm not who I'll never be compared to Lauren. I need to know that if I'm lying in a hospital bed again, someone will show up. Not with flowers, not with excuses. Just show up. My voice shook, but it was steady enough. Grandpa nodded, satisfied. There it is, the truth. Whether this family survives me depends on what you do with it. The screen went quiet again. My parents, my sister. They didn't argue. They didn't defend. For the first time in my life, they were speechless. And here's the twist. Just before I hit end call, I heard my father whisper to my mother, if she inherits the lake house, we need to reconsider. Even after everything, even after Grandpa's rebuke, their minds were still on property, not me. 2 weeks after my surgery, against Dr. Patel's strong recommendation, but with his reluctant approval, I boarded a train bound for Connecticut. My grandfather's condition had stabilized just enough that I needed to see him, really see him, before time ran out. Sophie insisted on coming along, declaring herself my medical bodyguard, while Clara had armed me with strict instructions about medication, warning signs, and what not to ignore. The journey left me pale and trembling, but when I finally stepped into Grandpa Edward's hospital room, his eyes lit up like I'd just carried the sun inside. Madison, he whispered, voice weak but warm. You came. Of course I did, I said, fighting tears. Wild horses couldn't keep me away. We talked quietly, his hand clasping mine, frail but steady. He told me again that the Crystal Lake cabin was mine, that he'd always known it was my sanctuary. And then he said something I'll never forget. Strength isn't pretending you don't need anyone. Strength is knowing who deserves to stand beside you. He drifted off to sleep, and I slipped out, only to find my parents and Lauren waiting in the hall. The air between us was thick with everything unsaid. For once, I didn't flinch. I'm here for Grandpa, I told them. Not for you. The next weeks blurred into recovery. Grandpa passed peacefully 3 weeks later, and when the papers were read, the cabin was indeed mine. Lauren tried to hide her fury, but the truth was undeniable. The one person who had truly seen me left behind proof of it. Not just in property, but in legacy. Back in New York, my healing was slow. Stitches itched, headaches pulsed, energy came and went in waves. But Sophie showed up with groceries. Clara checked in with texts at midnight. And even Martin, the retired teacher I'd met during my hospital walks, mailed me puzzles to keep my mind busy. They weren't bound to me by blood, yet they chose to be there. 6 months later, I stood on the weathered dock of Crystal Lake, the sunset painting the water gold. Around me, laughter rose from the small group I now called family. Sophie was grilling vegetables. Clara sat with a mug of coffee. Martin played chess with a young man from the support group. None of us were bound by DNA, but every single one of them had shown up, when it mattered. That was the moment I finally understood. Family isn't the people who share your last name. It's the people who show up when you collapse. The ones who bring pajamas to the hospital, who sit with you through the fear, who feed your plants, or just hold your hand when your world falls apart. I don't know what the future holds with my parents or with Lauren. We've had strained conversations since Grandpa's funeral. Promises of trying harder, attempts at apologies. Maybe they'll change. Maybe they won't. But, for the first time in my life, my worth isn't tied to their approval. Because I've built something stronger. Family by choice, not obligation. A circle forged in crisis, strengthened by kindness, and rooted in something my parents never gave me: presence. So here's the lesson I want you to take with you tonight. Blood may tie us to people, but it doesn't guarantee love. Real love is proven in action, in who walks into your hospital room when everyone else walks out. If you've ever been made to feel invisible, remember this. You deserve to be seen. You deserve people who choose you without question, who stand by you without being asked. And you deserve to let go of the ones who never could. Life is too short for bitterness, too fragile for grudges. Forgive if you can, release what you must, and hold on fiercely to those who truly show up. Because in the end, family isn't about who raises you. It's about who stays.